Step one in your instruction manual is actually quite easy, but we just, as always, want to provide a few tips. The first tip we would provide is that we would like you to use a tablecloth or some sort of towel on the table before we flip over the cooler so that we make sure that we don't do any damage or scratch either your table or the cooler itself. The next thing we're always going to recommend, team, is to put safety glasses on and gloves. Anytime you guys lift something or use something or a screwdriver, I think it's always a good idea. The next thing that we're going to suggest is just a simple pry tool. You're going to kind of work it inside where the feet are, kind of twist it around, and as you can see, the foot will come off with no damage to the cooler and no damage to the foot. Step two. One of the key components in one of our patented areas is what we call our wedges. These wedges allow us to hook into your cooler without doing any damage like screws or things like that. You're simply going to loosen the brass fitting so the bottom becomes loose. You'll fit them into your holes, either the inside or outside holes. On this particular cooler that we're using today, we found that the outside holes work a little better, so that's what we're concentrating on. Once you have set all 4 wedges into the correct corners, what you're going to go do is hand tighten. Once they're hand tight, you're just kind of go through, use your provided tool from the GOFR toolkit. We'll give them a good turn to make sure that it's solid and has a good connection. Once you're done there, again, just a little bit of knowledge, it will absolutely support the entire weight of your cooler. Once you've completed that, you'll notice that your brass area does twist because we just screwed it in. We want to prevent that from backing off, so we are going to use what's labeled in your instruction manual as your star locks. These simply pop in around each area to make sure that your bolt or your system doesn't back off until you want it to. The next step is going to be installing your chassis. The chassis is made to move both in length and in width on your cooler. So what we've done is using the little brass standouts that are already on the cooler, we like to line them up with the grooves that are already existing. As noted, from the factory, your chassis comes pre-assembled to fit carts from about 45 to about 65 quart in size. If you would like, you can certainly expand your chassis to fit larger coolers up to about 100 quart. All you would do is follow the steps in your direction manual as shown. Center the chassis on the cooler. We provide you notches that are on the chassis that you can see and make reference points, and this looks pretty good to me. Time to start tightening your chassis down to the connection system. GOFR does provide a little bit of a tool because it can be a little cumbersome to try to get everything in. So we wanted to make sure that we had everything prepared and made it easy for you to assemble. Using your GOFR tool, take your screw washer, place it onto the GOFR tool, then find the brass insert, use your Allen key and your GOFR tool to help line up and simply screw in the washer and screw into the brass insert and remove the GOFR tool before completely tightening. So once you have all of your 4 sides locked down, now what we're going to do is we're going to take our GOFR tool and your provided Allen wrench, and you're going to go through and you're just going to simply tighten up the chassis so it no longer moves. Again, doesn't have to be overly tight, just tight enough to make a good solid connection. First step to start assembling your panels is to start connecting the panel extenders. We want these kind of hand tight, not much more than that. The reason why is they are made to float around and allow your system to move just a little bit. And if you want to, you can come through after you're done and use your GOFR tool and your Allen wrench to tighten them even more. Thought for sake of time, we'll show you how it works. Next, what you're going to do, and the reason why we have you do this to your panels first, is so that you can see how it lines up and sits on your cooler. What we want is we want it to sit flush on the cooler. So we have already then identified what slot it's going to fit into simply by laying the cooler and allowing it to lay flat. We'll repeat the same process by using the same hardware and the same tools provided. At this point, you'll take your 2 nuts, put them on there the same exact way, and use your GOFR tool to tighten all the way around. Taking the hex part of your tool, sliding it into the nut, and using your Allen key to turn and to tighten. Next, we're going to move on to our larger panels. So these panels are, again, obviously going to work on the long side or the larger side of your cooler. We're going to follow the same exact process as we did for the small as we do to the large, using the provided hardware. Now we're going to use the large extenders provided and marked in your packaging. Now what we're going to do is use the guides on your chassis, and we're going to simply slide that in until our panel looks flush. Then we're going to choose the appropriate hole on the cooler and using the nuts and bolts provided to tighten and then to lock them down as you proceed. You can simply use your GOFR tool and your Allen wrench provided to do a couple of more turns to make sure you have a solid connection. Step 7 is just assembling your straps with the hardware we provided. Quite simple. You'll take one side, run it through the hole, you'll screw in the other side. You can see how that looks there. We'll come back, we'll do the same thing. Make sure that these are all focused on the same side so that the strap fits correctly. You'll simply just take those together, tighten them up, and now your strap is assembled and ready to assemble on your cooler. You're simply going to follow the thread in your panel, tighten down, and follow the same process throughout all 4 corners. If your axles are off and you want to place this on your boat, your car, your truck bed, or wherever it may be, we wanted to make sure, unlike any other carts on the market, that you had rubber feet that you could readily use. It's quite simple. You'll use the hardware that's provided. You're going to match them up to the holes that are on the outside of your chassis. You'll use the GOFR tool, screwdriver provided, and you're simply going to screw them in to the holes that are already pre-drilled with the self-tapping screws. Of course, we're going to repeat this on all 4 corners. Step 9 is simply to go ahead and put your handle clip on. One quick tip before we get started. You'll notice that we've chosen to put this on the side, and they are the same panel, front and back, but we've chosen to put this on the side opposite of your drain plug. That way your steering can be up here and you can still reach your drain plug in back. All we're simply going to do is match up our little holes with our screwdriver, and we're going to go ahead and self-tap these into the panel. There you go. Tighten firmly, and step 9 is now complete. All right, well, now that we're on to step 10, we're going to start to assemble our axles and our wheels. Quite a simple process. This is our rear axle. We'll go ahead and assemble this first. Obviously, you're going to need 2 wheels. One goes on either side of your axle, like that. We'll also use the provided hardware. GOFR uses bearings on both sides of your wheel. Imagine a skateboard, for a lack of a better word. We want to give you that ability to glide over things rather than just try to pull over certain things. So all we're going to do is we're going to put our bearings into the wheels as shown in your manual. You're simply going to put the bolt in the provided nut as shown. And again, because it's all made to tighten on its own, we're going to finger tighten first. The reason being is that just kind of helps you seat everything, and we can come back and tighten later. Again, we're going to repeat the same exact process on the other side. So now, once they're hand tightened, what we'll ask you to do is take the provided wrench, come in here, and start to lock down your bolts and really tighten up the system. And your rear axle is assembled and ready to go. Now we'll do the front, which is your steering side. It's the same basic premise as what you've just done. You'll just notice there's a lot more parts here. But again, these parts are already pre-assembled for you to make assembly much, much easier and ready to go. So all we're going to do is really the same process. Your front steering, as well as your rear axles, here and here, are now ready to attach to your cooler. We're locking the rear axle. The reason why is anytime we want to take on and off the axles, you don't want it to roll on you. So what this does is allows the tires to stop rolling to give you the opportunity to then put on your rear and front axles. And we're always going to start with the rear. We're simply just going to slide it just like that to where it matches up the grooves. You're simply going to stick the pins in, and your axle, your rear axle, is now fully connected. It's that simple. As we move on to the front, we do have our steering, which we'll cover in a minute, but this is your axle assembly. Same process. You notice the rear locks were on here, so the cooler didn't move while we were doing it. Same exact process. You're going to go ahead and stick the pins in, and once they're in, they're seated and done. You are now ready to make your cooler a cart. The last part to your assembly, and really before you're ready to roll, is just getting on your steering system. It's quite interesting. It's two pieces, solid aluminum. The first piece we're going to give you a pin for. You're simply going to work until you meet up the holes, run it through the holes, just like that. Now your steering column is in. Then you're simply going to take the tube within a tube and adjust it as needed. I myself kind of like it on the second hole, so that's where we'll go ahead and put the pin in and adjust it accordingly. So now you'll note your steering is in. Now you can go ahead and use the clip that you previously installed to hold it straight, upright, and ready to go.